खण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। हरिः ओम्। तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramakrishnaaya. The nectar of the sin-effacing utterances brings life and hope to those scorched by misery. They are extolled by wise sages, and the mere listening to them eradicate one's sinful tendencies. They confer every prosperity. Those who spread them broadcast are verily magnanimous. They provide what is completely satisfying to the hearer. Welcome to the 8th class of readings and reflections on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. First, we shall do the readings and then we shall do the reflections. Page 102. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Chapter 3, Visit to Vidyasagar. One man may read the Bhagavata by the light of a lamp, and another may commit a forgery by that very light, but the lamp is unaffected. The sun sheds its light on the wicked as well as on the virtuous. You may ask, how then can one explain misery and sin and unhappiness? The answer is that these apply only to the jiva. Brahman is unaffected by them. There is poison in a snake, but though others may die if bitten by it, the snake itself is not affected by the poison. What Brahman is cannot be described. All things in the world, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, the 6 systems of philosophy have been defiled like food that has been touched by the tongue, for they have been read or uttered by the tongue. Only one thing has not been defiled in this way, and that is Brahman. No one has ever been able to say what Brahman is. Vidyasagar to his friends. Oh, that is a remarkable statement. I have learned something new today. Master, a man had 2 sons. The father sent them to a preceptor to learn the knowledge of Brahman. After a few years, they returned from their preceptor's house and bowed low before their father. Wanting to measure the depth of their knowledge of Brahman, he first questioned the older of the 2 boys. My child, he said, you have studied all the scriptures. Now tell me, what is the nature of Brahman? The boy began to explain Brahman by reciting various texts from the Vedas. The father did not say anything. Then he asked the younger son the same question, but the boy remained silent and stood with eyes cast down. No word escaped his lips. The father was pleased and said to him, my child, you have understood a little of Brahman. What it is cannot be expressed in words. Men often think they have understood Brahman fully. Once an ant went to a hill of sugar. One grain filled its stomach. Taking another grain in its mouth, it started homeward. On its way, it thought, next time I shall carry home the whole hill. That is the way shallow minds think. They don't know that Brahman is beyond one's words and thought. However great a man may be, how much can he know of Brahman? Sukadeva and sages like him may have been big ants, but even they could carry at the most 8 or 10 grains of sugar. As for what has been said in the Vedas and the Puranas, do you know what it is like? Suppose a man has seen the ocean and somebody asks him, well, what is the ocean like? The first man opens his mouth as wide as he can and says, what a sight, what tremendous waves and sounds. The description of Brahman in the sacred books is like that. It is said in the Vedas that Brahman is of the nature of bliss. It is Satchidananda. Sukha and other sages stood on the shore of this ocean of Brahman and saw and touched the water. According to one school of thought, they never plunged into it. Those who do cannot come back to the world again. In Samadhi, one attains the knowledge of Brahman. One realizes Brahman. In that state, reasoning stops altogether and man becomes mute. He has no power to describe the nature of Brahman. Once a salt dog went to measure the depth of the ocean. All laugh. It wanted to tell others how deep the water was, but this it could never do, for no sooner did it get into the water than it melted. Now, who was there to report the ocean's depth? A devotee. Suppose a man has obtained the knowledge of Brahman in Samadhi, doesn't he speak anymore? Master, Shankaracharya, there is a note, one of the greatest philosophers of India, retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach others. After the vision of Brahman, a man becomes silent. He reasons about it as long as he has not realized it. If you heat butter in a pan on the stove, it makes a sizzling sound as long as the water it contains has not dried up. But when no trace of water is left, the clarified butter makes no sound. If you put an uncooked cake of flour in the butter, it sizzles again. But after the cake is cooked, all sound stops. Just so, a man established in Samadhi comes down to the relative plane of consciousness in order to teach others, and then he talks about God. The bee buzzes as long as it is not sitting on a flower. It becomes silent when it begins to sip the honey. But sometimes, intoxicated with the honey, it buzzes again. An empty pitcher makes a gurgling sound when it is dipped in water. When it fills up, it becomes silent. All laugh. But if the water is poured from it into another pitcher, then you will hear the sound again. Laughter. The rishis of old attained the knowledge of Brahman. One cannot have this so long as there is the slightest trace of worldliness. How hard the rishis labored. Early in the morning, they would go away from the hermitage and would spend the whole day in solitude, meditating on Brahman. At night, they would return to the hermitage and eat a little fruit or roots. They kept their minds aloof from the objects of sight, hearing, touch, and other things of a worldly nature. Only thus did they realize Brahman as their own inner consciousness. But in the Kali Yuga, man, being totally dependent on food for life, cannot altogether shake off the idea that he is the body. In this state of mind, it is not proper for him to say, I am he. Aham Brahmasmi. When a man does all sorts of worldly things, he should not say, I am Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. Those who cannot give up attachment to worldly things and who find no means to shake off the feeling of I should rather cherish the idea, I am God's servant. I am his devotee. One can also realize God by following the path of devotion. The Jnani gives up his identification with worldly things, discriminating not this, not this. Only then can he realize Brahman. It is like reaching the roof of a house by leaving the steps behind one by one. But the Vijnani, who is more intimately acquainted with Brahman, realizes something more. He realizes that the steps are made of the same materials as the roof, bricks, lime and brick dust. That which is realized intuitively as Brahman through the eliminating process of not this, is then found to have become the universe and all its living beings. The Vijnani sees that the reality which is nirguna, without attributes, is also saguna with attributes. A man cannot live on the roof a long time. He comes down again. Those who realize Brahman in Samadhi come down also and find that it is Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings. In the musical scale, there are notes sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni. But one cannot keep one's voice on ni a long time. The ego does not vanish altogether. The man coming down from Samadhi perceives that it is Brahman that has become the ego, the universe, and all living beings. This is known as Vijnana. The path of knowledge leads to truth, as does the path that combines knowledge and love. The path of love too leads to this goal. The way of love is as true as the way of knowledge. All paths ultimately lead to the same truth. But as long as God keeps the feeling of ego in us, it is easier to follow the path of love. The Vijnani sees that Brahman is immovable and actionless, like Mount Sumeru. This universe consists of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. They are in Brahman, but Brahman is unattached. The Vijnani further sees that what is Brahman is the Bhagavan, the personal God. He who is beyond the three gunas is the Bhagavan with his 6 supernatural powers. Living beings, the universe, mind, intelligence, love, renunciation, knowledge. All these are the manifestations of his power. With a laugh, if an aristocrat has neither house nor property, or if he has been forced to sell them, one doesn't call him an aristocrat anymore. All love. God is endowed with the 6 supernatural powers. If he were not, who would obey him? All love. Just see how picturesque the universe is. How many things there are. The sun, moon and stars, and how many varieties of living beings, big and small, good and bad, strong and weak, some endowed with more power, some with less. Vidyasagar. Has he endowed some with more power and others with less? Master. As the all-pervading spirit, he exists in all beings, even in the ant. But the manifestations of his power are different in different beings. Otherwise, how can one person put 10 to flight while another can't face even one? And why do all people respect you? Have you grown a pair of horns? Laughter. You have more compassion and learning. Therefore, people honor you and come to pay you their respects. Don't you agree with me? Vidyasagar smiled. The master continued. There is nothing in mere scholarship. The object of study is to find means of knowing God and realizing Him. A holy man had a book. When asked what it contained, he opened it and showed that on all the pages were written the words Om Rama and nothing else. What is the significance of the Gita? It is what you find by repeating the word 10 times. It is then reversed into Tagi, which means a person who has renounced everything for God. And the lesson of the Gita is, O man, renounce everything and seek God alone. Whether a man is a monk or a householder, he has to shake off all attachment from his mind. Chaitanya Deva set out on a pilgrimage to southern India. One day, he saw a man reading the Gita. Another man, seated at a distance, was listening and weeping. His eyes were swimming in tears. Chaitanya Deva asked him, "Do you understand all this?" The man said, "No, revered sir, I don't understand a word of the text." "Then why are you crying?" asked Chaitanya. The devotee said, "I see Arjuna's chariot before me. I see Lord Krishna and Arjuna seated in front of it, talking. I see this and I weep." Why does a Vijnani keep an attitude of love toward God? The answer is that I consciousness persists. It disappears in the state of samadhi, no doubt, but it comes back. In the case of ordinary people, the I never disappears. You may cut down the ashwatha tree, but the next day's sprouts shoot up. All love. Even after the attainment of knowledge, this I consciousness comes up. Nobody knows from where. You dream of a tiger, then you awake, but your heart keeps on palpitating. All of our suffering is due to this I. The cow cries, "Hamba, hamba," which means I. That is why it suffers so much. It is yoked to the plough and made to work in rain and sun. Then it may be killed by the butcher. From its hide, shoes are made, and also drums, which are mercilessly beaten. Laughter. Still, it does not escape suffering. At last, strings are made out of the entrails for the bows used in carding cotton. Then it no longer says, "Hamba, hamba," I, but "Tuhu, tuhu," thou, thou. Only then are its troubles over. O Lord, I am the servant, thou art the master. I am the child, thou art the mother. Once Rama asked Hanuman, "How do you look on me?" And Hanuman replied, "O Rama, as long as I have the feeling of I see that thou art the whole and I am a part. Thou art the master and I am the servant. But when, O Rama, I have the knowledge of truth, then I realize that thou art I and I am thou." The relationship of master and servant is the proper one. Since this I must remain, let the rascal be God's servant. I and mine, these constitute ignorance. My house, my wealth, my learning, my possessions. The attitude that prompts one to say such things comes of ignorance. On the contrary, the attitude born of knowledge is, "O God, thou art the master, and all these things belong to thee. House, family, children, attendants, friends are thine." One should constantly remember death. Nothing will survive death. We are born into this world to perform certain duties, like the people who come from the countryside to Calcutta on business. If a visitor goes to a rich man's garden, the superintendent says to him, "This is our garden, this is our lake," and so forth. But if the superintendent is dismissed for some misdeed, he can't carry away even his mango wood chest. He sends it secretly by the gatekeeper. Laughter. God laughs on two occasions. He laughs when the physician says to the patient's mother, "Don't be afraid, mother, I shall certainly cure your boy." God laughs, saying to himself, "I am going to take his life," and this man says he will save it. The physician thinks he is the master, forgetting that God is the master. God laughs again when two brothers divide their land with a string, saying to each other, "This side is mine and that side is yours." He laughs and says to himself, the whole universe belongs to me, but they say they own this portion or that portion. Can one know God through reasoning? Be his servant. Surrender yourself to him and then pray to him. To Vidyasagar with a smile. Well, what is your attitude? Vidyasagar smiling. Someday I shall confide it to you. All laugh. Master laughing. God cannot be realized through mere scholarly reasoning. Intoxicated with divine love, the Master sang. Who is there that can understand what Mother Kali is? Even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her. It is she, the scriptures say, that is the inner self of the yogi, who in self discovers all his joy. She that of her own sweet will inhabits every living thing. The macrocosm and the microcosm rest in the mother's womb. Now, do you see how vast it is? In the Mooladhara, the yogi meditates on her, and in the Sahasrara, who but Shiva has beheld her as she really is? Within the lotus wilderness, she sports beside her mate, the swan, which is Shiva the Absolute. When man aspires to understand her, Ram Prasad must smile. To think of knowing her, he says, is quite as laughable as to imagine one can swim across the boundless sea. But while my mind has understood, alas, my heart has not. Though but a dwarf, it still would strive to make a captive of the moon. Continuing, the Master said, did you notice the macrocosm and the microcosm rest in the mother's womb? Now do you see how vast it is? Again the poet says, even the 6 darshanas are powerless to reveal her. She cannot be realized by means of mere scholarship. So we shall reflect on this passage that we just went through for a few moments. It's so interesting in this 3rd chapter, which is called Visit to Vidyasagar. Sri Ramakrishna comes out so brilliantly. Now, in one side, Vidyasagar, a man of very high learning. The whole of India during his time knew about Vidyasagar, and he was such a great learned man. And his scholarship has no end. He knew not only English, and he knew the Sanskrit language. He knew his mother tongue Bengali so well. And he was so popular with the public that he was a philanthropic man. He did all alone as one man. He created nearly 90 schools in all over Bengal. At that time, Bengal was a big province. The East Bengal and West Bengal both were together. And he used to travel extensively and create schools so that children can come and study. And he made that every school must have a building of its own. And whatever money he received, he spent all the money. And he didn't have any family. So he could spend the money for the welfare of the public. And also we find, and he had great scholarship. That scholarship, even till today, I should say, God bless, till today we find what he wrote to teach the Sanskrit language, that Sanskrita Kaumudi, that is being read even till today in the schools. So when I went to Belur Math for training center, so that book was the grammar book for us. So we read that book to learn Sanskrit grammar. So brilliantly he has compiled a book to teach people, and a very common people, how to teach them Sanskrit. So he wrote a book on grammar. And he was the first person to say to write a book on Bengali language alphabets. That is also something unique. No, people were speaking Bengali and they didn't know how to teach the children. So he wrote a book, alphabetics. So how a, ka, ka, ga, like that he wrote a book. That also became a very famous. And even till today, during the children were taught the Aksharabhyas. At that time they bring that book. So such a great man. And here another side, Ramakrishna, who is an illiterate person. He just went to school, got admitted and came back. I said, no, this school is not for me. And he never studied. He never went to school further, not to speak of college, etc. And no language learning also. Even his own Bengali, which is mother tongue, he would speak in the village type of Bengali. Not the pure Bengali of the Calcuttans, who used to speak. The Calcutta Bengali was not known to him. But all the Calcuttans used to come to him and they would speak to him in their pure language. But Master, that is Ramakrishna, would speak in his village language. So a man who is unlettered and a man who is great scholar, both of them are meeting each other. That was something, a great impact on the history of Bengal itself. Because Sri Ramakrishna found out the personality of Vidyasagar. When the first time when they meet, that the previous our class, we found out how they had overdoing each other. That means when Ramakrishna says something, Vidyasagar intelligently counters it. And what Vidyasagar says, the unlettered man, here, he counters him more intelligently. So there was something like a competition in their arguments. And finally Vidyasagar becomes quiet. He had no answer to say to him. So he found him, he has heard about Ramakrishna, and this was the first time he is seeing Sri Ramakrishna. And he has not heard from Ramakrishna's mouth directly sitting under him. And today, that is on the day when Ramakrishna went to him, he asked about God, about the ultimate God whom the Hindus call Brahman, Christians call God, Muslims call Allah. Like that, Buddhas call the state of God realization as Nirvana. So you find every religion has got a concept of God. Ultimate reality, it is called. Whatever word you say that, is it ultimate reality in this universe is something, a supreme power. About that Sri Ramakrishna is telling him that cannot be explained in words. That is something he has never heard about that. He has been explaining also he has been reading scriptures. Now we understand Vidyasagar, who is the master of ancient Puranas, ancient our literature, Sanskrit literature, where God is being talked all the time. In Gita also you will find Sri Krishna speaks about God. Everywhere God is talked, in all the scriptures speak of God. But he never heard that God cannot be explained in words. And for that, Sri Ramakrishna gives him some beautiful examples. He says that whatever comes out of mouth is all uchishta. That is a beautiful word. Uchishta means, jhuta. In Hindi we call it jhuta. That means that has become defiled. Because if you eat something and take it out, that one you cannot give to another person because that is defiled. So you have to only throw it. So whatever comes out of mouth is considered as a defiled. So Sri Ramakrishna says, one Brahman, the Supreme God, has not been explained by anybody in words. That's why it is completely remaining undefiled. This idea that God cannot be defiled by speaking out, that is coming out of mouth, so that struck him. He says, oh, that is a remarkable statement. I have learned something new today. What a beautiful way of his humility, you see. A humble man. He accepts, though he knows all these things, perhaps he must have heard this also in some other place, but then still he says, I learned a new thing today. Very humble man he is. Vidya dadati vinayam. We say, what Vidya gives you, his name is Vidya Sagar, the ocean of learning, and it gives you humility. If you are very well qualified and know so many things, you become very so humble. And you say, what I know? I do not know anything. Like that you say humbly. So that humility he has. So that's why he has got so many good qualities. And Sri Ramakrishna says, when he was telling that God remains in every being and he gives certain or manifests certain powers in some, certain powers, less powers in others. That means a great man comes here. At that time, you can see that great man has got great possibilities. So he has got great talents. So you worship him, you bow down to him, you accept his supremacy. But then there are some people who do not know anything. They are ignorant as ever. So Vidyasagar is asking a question to Sri Ramakrishna, indicating in his mind and to the others also sitting there, whether God is partial. Is God partial? Why should you charge God as partial? If God gives, our Dr. Siddhartha Sen, he has become a doctor and is Trinity College professor. Such a great scholarship he has given him. But to me he has not given that scholarship. Is God partial to endow him with more talent and endow me with less talent? So his attack on God, is always there. He was of course an agnostic. He knew all the scriptures, but Vidyasagar was not a God believer. So he got a point now from Sri Ramakrishna. So he wanted to pull down Sri Ramakrishna. And he says, oh, that means the God is partial. To some he gives more powers and to some less powers. But Sri Ramakrishna will always defend God. He says, no, God is not partial. Why? How does he say that God is not partial? So he gives that God cannot be partial. God is there in everyone. And everyone he manifests in that person his powers. And wherever the suitability of the person is there, he manifests. In another place, Sri Ramakrishna says, if you put a light, say a bulb, says, the bulb is fully covered with dust. Then what you do? That suppose it has got 60 watt bulb. That 60 watt lux will not come out because it is covered by dust. You take the bulb out and clean it and then put it again and you see the full 60 lux comes out. So God is there in everyone, but he comes out according to the purity of the soul. So some people are more pure and some people are less pure. Less pure means what? They are covered by the dust of worldliness. So as the dust of worldliness is removed, then God manifests more. So here he says that the all-pervading spirit, God exists in all beings, even in the ant. And he says, but his manifestation of his power is different in different beings. And then he says, one person in fight can put 10 to run away, and another person cannot do. So this is the power difference you can see. Then when Vidyasagar asked him, has he endowed some with more power and others with less power? For that he answers here, have you grown a pair of horns? That is a very beautiful way of putting in Bengali, So, what do you say that? Tumhar mata shing beriyechi ki. So have you grown two horns in your hand, in your head? That's why I have come to see you. I have not come to see you just because you are grown horns. There is no horn in you. You are also a man like me. But I have come to see you because of your scholarship, because of your nature of helping all the people, unselfish love for others. That's why I have come to see you. You have more compassion and learning. Compare this to other many people who have not compassion at all. Killing people. We find people are very happy to kill. Is it not? You take a bomb and put it into your shirt or a backpack and go and kill hundreds of people. It is happening nowadays. So you see that how a man can be having without any compassion and learning, such a superior learning. Therefore, people honor you and come to pay you their respects. Don't you agree with me? Vidyasagar could not but agree. But how can he say he is a humble man? So he cannot say, okay, you are right. He simply smiled. So the smiling means understood. Yes, he agrees to that. Then the master continued. Now, he continues to tell him, the scholarship that you have, for which you are so famous, and for which people come and respect you, is not everything. This is one of the beautiful ideas that he wants to instruct him. So that is the purpose, I think, the master's visit to Vidyasagar, to tell Vidyasagar there is something more within you that you are not going after. Later, when Yam asked Sri Ramakrishna, you went to Vidyasagar and met him, what do you think of him? He says, I found a person who has got shining treasures within himself, but not realizing that shining treasures are within him. He felt pity for Vidyasagar because that treasures that he has not yet understood. So that's why he says, there is nothing in mere scholarship. The object of study for your scholarship is to find means of knowing God and realizing Him. So when he was in Dakshineswar, one sadhu from Bihar came. It's a Bihari sadhu, as we call him. So he came, and Sri Ramakrishna used to notice all those people who come to Dakshineswar. Whoever comes there, he would generally notice what that person does, how he spends his time, all the time, etc. So one sadhu used to be in meditating mood. Always he was meditating. And sometimes, suddenly from meditation, he would open his eyes and he had a jola, that is a handbag, a shoulder bag he had. And he would take out the bag and he would take out a book from the bag. And he would open the book and look at like this, close it, put it in the bag. And then again he would sit for meditation. So, Sri Ramakrishna was very curious. So one day he went to him and sat next to him. And then he used to talk to him in Hindi also. Ramakrishna could speak in Hindi. So he asked this holy man, what is this? I am finding that you are opening your bag and taking out a book, look at that and close it down. And again you meditate. What is that? Then that man, sadhu, asked, oh, you are curious about the book. Look, I will show you. Then he opened the bag and showed him. Only 2 pages it has got. You open this, left side and right side. It is written, one page Om, another page Rama. Then the sadhu said, look, Paramahans, I am seeing this whenever my mind is filled with Ram's name and Ram's glory. I am so happily meditating. Suddenly, the mind will come down from the meditation. It won't stay all along in meditation, which I want. That's why I have come to Dakshineswar, to practice my meditation. But then, my mind doesn't stay there. When it comes down, immediately I know, oh, I have now slipped. So how to take back my mind to a high level? Immediately I will open this book and see. I will say, Om Rama is written. Immediately the name of God, when I read it, immediately my mind will soar high. So that's why I keep this book. See, Ramakrishna used to give this example, how one can take one's mind again up. The mind's nature is to go down. Because he says in one place that what is the nature of water? If there is a lower portion and you pour water, the water will straight go down. That is the nature of water. So the mind's nature also to always go down towards the sense objects. Because we have got 5 senses. And any type of the 5 senses will attract the mind. And the mind will naturally go down. But then when you know, when I realize that my mind is slipping now, so how do you take away from that object and raise the mind to the higher level? Particularly during our sadhana time. When sadhana time, what happens? That mind should not come down. You had even 15 minutes you meditate every day. Even that 15 minutes, the mind must be kept at a particular level. So that level, when the mind goes down, how you will take it back? So you must have some type of methods. You must have your own methods, create your own methods so that your mind can be kept back, taken back to the higher level. So this sadhu from Bihar, he had a small book and in that he had written Om Rama. That was sufficient for him to see the name of the Rama and again he takes it back. And then Sri Ramakrishna tells him, after all, what is in Gita? You repeat it 10 times. So people will say repeat. In the children's class I tell the children, you repeat now Gita 10 times. So Gita, 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 Gita. Tagi it has come. So Sri Ramakrishna says, Gita teaches Tagi. In Bengali, it is not exactly pronounced as Tyagi. Though you write ta half and jokar ache, kintu you don't say that. You say Tagi. So in Bengali it is perfectly meaning the same thing. So Tagi means renunciation. So one man who has renounced is called Tagi. So what Gita teaches? Renounce, shake off all attachments from your mind. Whether you are a man is a monk or a householder, he has to shake off all attachment from his mind. It's a very beautiful word he uses. And then he says, then he tells Vidyasagar, after realization of God, what happens? So, the realization of God is jnana. But when a man has realized God and from samadhi he comes down, that state is called vijnana. This is something not absolutely a new concept. You have some other references in earlier Sanskrit literature or scriptures are there. But here Sri Ramakrishna gives a new turn to this concept of jnana and vijnana. So a vijnani is one who comes back from samadhi and teaches about God. A jnani is one who has realized God, but he will not be able to teach about God. Because he would say, I want to tell you what God is, but I cannot tell you. I have no words to tell. But somebody else you find, he comes back from samadhi and will teach you about God. So that state is called vijnana. And he says that jnana yoga and bhakti yoga, these two should be combined. Where one side knowledge, another side devotion. Because why we should have devotion in our life? Why we should not practice pure jnana yoga? It is because the greatest stumbling block in following jnana yoga, though you may read about jnana yoga, you can hear a lot of YouTube lectures are there nowadays. You can hear again and again and you feel very happy to hear about Atman and Brahman. But still you are not fit to practice jnana yoga because the I consciousness is there. Not the I consciousness equivalent thinking that I am God, aham brahmasmi, I am thou, I am that. That is not there. Rather, I am the body, I am the mind, I am the senses. This feeling is so strong in us. Even a little cut in our body, you can find how much we suffer. Recently, when I went to Zurich, I got cold. And the cold troubled me so much. I used to think, what is the use of this body? This body is dragging me. It is making me think of the body. What to eat, what to have, whether I should have rasam or not. And Maharaj is recommending rasam. And then everything is only centered around the body. So long you are having the body consciousness, is it possible for you to practice jnana yoga? It is not. And what to talk about the common man who is full of body consciousness. So for them, it is better to have bhakti yoga. Take God as your personal God, the infinite God who is present everywhere. That God be my personal God, and He is the master and I am the servant. So in this way, if we have an attitude, then what happens? This bhakti yoga helps us tremendously. So he wants to tell, because Vidyasagar needed that type of teaching. he never heard about that. So he is telling him that one must have this bhakti yoga. In bhakti yoga what happens? Emotion is taken up. We are all having 4 types of tendencies. It is ingrained in every human being. What are the 4 tendencies? One is talkative, argumentative. You will always argument this thing, that thing against. So that means your intellect is very vibrant, very intellectual person. So when the person comes, of course today only you finish the Enneagram course. So Purnananji has conducted and showed you what number you are. So you all know your number and what you do. And some people are very argumentative in nature and their intellect is very vibrant, alive, aware they are. So what happens? That type of people are there and we all have that type of intellectuality. We do have that type of argumentative nature. Whether in small measure or big measure, we all have. Another tendency we have our emotion also. I have seen people sometimes when I tell some personal anecdotes in my discourses and some people are actually weeping. In Delhi when I was talking about some incidents about ego only, you see, at that time some people were, that tears were dripping from their eyes. They were removing the tears. So I could see that they were so emotionally packed. So emotion also is one of the ingredient in our mind, in our personality. So emotion is there. Third one is the working capability. If you go to an ashram, you can see some people sit for the bhajans and they will nicely listen to the bhajans and enjoy. Some people are not enjoying bhajans. Neither they are enjoying the talks. They will go inside and clean the kitchen and make ready. When people will come out from the bhajan, let will serve us. So their working capacity is there. And they want to work. So the element of working, the tendency, that is present. And some people, they don't want any of these things. They are having always meditative type, as we call them. So they come and sit and meditate quietly. And particularly I have seen in Singapore, after the function is over, all have got up and gone away. And Pujari Maharaj has come to close the shrine. And you will find 2-3 people quietly sitting there. They don't go down. They don't rush for the prasad. They know, even in the last if you go, you will get something. So they are all sitting quietly. And they are meditative type. Because in the crowd they cannot meditate. So they are practicing meditation. So the 4 tendencies we all have. But how much percentage we have of each? Is it equal percentage, 25%? No. The percentage or the computation of the percentage, if you see, it differs from person to person. Even 2 children twins born to a family will have different percentage of combination. So the combinations are different. So somebody may have one type of computation, another is something. So we have to see that what is predominant in among the 4 qualities. If the 4 qualities are equally present, you will be happy to hear a talk intellectually, you will be happy to sing bhajans, you will be happy to meditate, and you will be happy to work also. But if it is different, if something is predominant, then that becomes your path. So, among the 4 paths, say Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, which yoga I should take? This is the general question we find people asking. So what you will say to them? That which is predominant in you will be your main nature. So choose that path. But don't neglect the other paths. The other tendencies are also present in your mind. If you weaken the other tendencies, if you neglect the other tendencies, then you are doing harm to that. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, don't go to Hazra and go on listening to these Vedanta talks. He is telling Vivekananda, Naren. Because he says, it's a dry Vedanti. You will become a dry Vedanti. That means you will have no passion, no emotion. And if the emotion is not there, how will you enjoy the bhakti? So for bhakti you require emotion. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, that's why see, we find that how Swamiji brought these 4 yogas into prominence. And he says, if you can put yourself in the mold of Ramakrishna, that means you have to blend harmoniously all these four aspects in your personality. Then I can certify that yes, you are in the mold of Sri Ramakrishna. So that is a great teaching that we think that in spite of having a personal tendency or predominant tendency in my mind, I have to accommodate the other three also and bring them also so that I can have a wholesome personality, not one-sided personality. Because during our training center time, I saw two brahmacharis who were there, and they would go on arguing during the classes. And they used to tell me, you see, the karma, which is important role in Ramakrishna Mission branches. Anywhere you go Ramakrishna Mission, you will have karma. The work has to be done, and the sadhus are ready to do the work. So, the karma is a major thing. In India, of course, we have hospitals, dispensaries, schools, and hostels, etc. So, a lot of work has to be done. So, those two brahmacharis used to say, we are not interested in karma at all. We want to sit and think and study the scriptures and think that I am God. This is what we want to practice. So that means, I used to ask them, you find this place is not congenial to your growth? I said, yes. And after 6 months they left. They went to Rishikesh and they started practicing their own path. But what happens is, you become one-sided. This one-sided is not Ramakrishna's personality. So when you place yourself in the mold of Ramakrishna, you must always remember that all the four aspects of the mental tendencies have to be nurtured, have to be given importance and cherished. So you find that Vidyasagar is being taught one of the wonderful idea of harmonizing knowledge with devotion, with bhakti. That's why he says how the Chaitanya Deva story he brings. Chaitanya Deva asked that devotee, why are you weeping? Do you understand what this man is telling? He said, no, I don't understand a word of what he is telling. But then I only imagine, he's talking about Gita. So I'm imagining there is a huge chariot standing, and there Krishna is standing and Arjuna is sitting, downcast. And Krishna is teaching him, and that itself is a great thing for me. So how he enjoys that scenery, and he says that God has become everything, and he has created this entire world, and he says he has become sun, moon, stars, and the clouds, and so much he has become. But then, when we want to know him by knowledge only, that is not enough. Because as we are attached to the body, what happens? The I never disappears. This is the very, very factual truth. However you may talk about abolishing the ego, it is not possible. Sri Ramakrishna's clear word, only in samadhi the ego gets dissolved. The moment from samadhi you come back, there is a slightest tinge of ego you have to keep. Some great saints like Shankaracharya had kept the tinge of ego so that they can teach others the great path. But then, if you don't have ego, means what? You are in samadhi. But if you want to live in this world and have to carry out all the works, that means you require this ego. So the ego is also required, and the ego never disappears. So, how to keep this ego? So, see, he says, Takshala Dashoye. Dashoye, that's a very beautiful sentence, In Bengali is very good. Jotomat Totopad, that is one of the one-line quote. There are one-line quotes of Sri Ramakrishna who become very famous. So this also became very famous. Takshala Dashoye. The shala word cannot be translated in English, but it is an abusive word. You can say, Nikhilanji knows that. He was a Bengali, so he knows the meaning of the words. So he didn't want to put the English people into problem. So he said, he has translated as a rascal. Well, that's quite good. We also go by that. So let the rascal remain as dasa. Dasa means as a slave. So master is there. My personal God is master, and he says. And then while telling about this, he talks about Hanuman also. And Hanuman was called Ramadasa. He was the slave of Rama. All the other people you will find that, hey, you must tell me 6:30. Is it 6:30? Okay. So he talks about Sri Rama, Hanuman, and Hanuman is like that. Is completely dasa of Sri Ramachandra. So we shall go ahead and we shall see in the next week some more aspects of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkhabhat Bhavet Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tatsat Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampadrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha Om Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.